The distress call had been screaming through the void for 27 standard cycles before anyone in the core worlds dared to answer. No one sane ventured into the Coridian expanse, Deathworld Sector 7, they called it. A place where suns died young, planets bled radiation, and the things that crawled in the dark made even apex predators of civilized space hide behind shields and prayers. And yet, someone had answered. The transmission was picked up first by a Terran relay in the Vega corridor. The signal wasn't a polite call for help, it was desperate, raw, an entire colony's last breath compressed into one unending scream for salvation. Automated beacons repeated coordinates over and over. Coridian 4, a barely habitable rock orbiting a crimson giant, now under attack by something that moved faster than scanners could track. The other species of the Galactic Concord glanced at the data, then turned away. Deathworlders were considered expendable. Everyone knew what lived beyond the black borders of that sector: swarms, packs, things that tore apart fleets and feasted on hull fragments. Sending a rescue fleet there was suicide. But the humans, they didn't even hesitate. They didn't send aid. They didn't send diplomats, medics, or negotiators. They sent one ship. An apex predator of steel, whose very silhouette was banned from holos across half the civilized galaxy, TNS Revenant. The Revenant was not built for mercy. It emerged from FTL with the silence of a guillotine, its kilometer-long frame blotting out starlight as it bled into real space. Its hull was obsidian black, its running lights muted. No banners, no insignias, just a Terran designation number scorched into its flanks like a warning to whatever dared look at it. The colony survivors on Coridian foresaw it first. A black shape descending through the atmosphere like some ancient myth-given form. Even through the roaring sandstorms and smoke, its profile was unmistakable: Terran Navy Superdreadnought, Siege Class. Inside, Captain Eric Vale stood at the forward command bridge, hands clasped behind his back, face carved in granite. Report scrolled across his HUD. Population count dropping. Unknown hostiles breaching dome sectors. Atmospheric radiation spiking. Vale didn't flinch. "Bring main batteries online," he ordered, his voice calm, cold. "We're not here to negotiate." When the Revenant's guns spoke, the world shook. Orbital cameras caught the first strike. A beam of white light lanced down from the ship's dorsal array, vaporizing an entire mountain range where the hostiles had been nesting. The shockwave tore through the valley, scattering the creatures like leaves in a storm. Survivors in the colony bunkers felt the ground split beneath them as molten glass formed where the strike had landed. Some thought they'd just been exterminated. But then the gunfire shifted, not toward them, but around them, a deadly perimeter of precision fire that carved out a safe zone in seconds. "Holy stars," whispered one of the bunker survivors as she watched the sky turn white with plasma discharges. "They didn't come to rescue us. They came to kill everything that wants us dead." But something was wrong. Long-range sensors picked up movement, thousands of signatures, converging on the colony from every horizon. The first wave had only been scouts. The real swarm was coming, and there were enough of them to blot out the planet's surface. Vale didn't blink as the data streamed in. This was what the Revenant had been built for. This was why humanity had dared to step into the abyss in the first place. To remind the monsters of the galaxy that predators, too, could fear. "Helm," he said, his voice low but carrying to every deck of the ship. "Lock us into low orbit. Weapons, prepare saturation fire." "Yes, Captain." Below, the colony survivors huddled together as the air crackled with the rising charge of the dreadnought siege arrays. For a heartbeat, the world went silent. As if the planet itself was holding its breath. Then the Revenant unleashed hell. For a moment, silence reigned across Coridian 4. Only the hum of the dreadnought siege arrays filled the air, a sound so low it made the teeth of every living being vibrate. Then the sky split open. The Revenant's broadside unleashed its fury, lines of fire sweeping across the horizon like a god drawing scars into the planet's flesh. Orbital bombardment lit the night into false daylight as precision rail batteries tore the swarm apart before it even reached the colony perimeter. But the swarm did not stop. Through the rolling clouds of dust and plasma, they came, millions of chitinous bodies, wings thrashing, claws scraping the rock as they advanced in a wave that seemed endless. Every step was a living drumbeat against the planet's crust. Inside the bunker, the colonists clutched their rifles with trembling hands. Even the veterans among them knew they couldn't fight this. If the Terrans hadn't come, they'd already be dead. But even with the Revenant overhead, they weren't sure if they would survive. On the bridge, Captain Eric Vale stood motionless as the swarm's signatures swelled across the tactical display. Each contact represented something fast, armored, and hungry enough to kill with its bare claws. "Sir," said Lieutenant Kale, her voice tense. "Projected swarm density at 45 seconds, saturation threshold. We can't kill them all before they breach the outer domes." Vale didn't turn. His eyes remained fixed on the red blotches converging on the colony. "Then we burn everything outside the perimeter." The lieutenant blinked. "Sir, that's a Class 7 extermination protocol. The surface will be uninhabitable for weeks." Vale's voice cut her off like a blade. "And if we wait, the colony won't be habitable at all." There was no hesitation in his tone, no room for debate. "Prep the Nova Lances," he ordered. "All batteries, full sweep. Target everything that moves." From orbit, the Revenant looked like an executioner drawing its blade. 6 Nova Lance arrays glowed along its hull, building up energy until the light alone cast shadows across the planet's surface. When they fired, the effect was apocalyptic. Columns of searing plasma carved deep scars into the planet, detonating underground hives and boiling entire lakes into steam. Shockwaves tore across the ground, flipping the first wave of the swarm into the air before they were disintegrated mid-flight. The colony shook violently. Every sensor went white with overload. Even from the bunkers, the colonists could feel the heat through the reinforced walls, could smell the burning atmosphere. But the swarm adapted. From the smoking craters, larger creatures emerged, their armor gleaming like black obsidian, their movements faster and more coordinated. The bombardment had destroyed millions. But the survivors were evolving in real time. "Reading, new signatures," Kale said, voice rising in disbelief. "Large ones. They're shrugging off direct hits from our secondaries." Vale's jaw tightened. The swarm wasn't just surviving, they were learning. That was the problem with Deathworlders. They weren't like the mindless predators of other sectors. These things were smart, coordinated. Killing them made the survivors more dangerous. Vale exhaled slowly. There was only one option left, and he had hoped to avoid it. "Signal Fleet Command," he said. "Authorization code Omega-72. Kale's eyes widened. "Sir, that activates a full cleansing sweep. It will erase everything down there, including the colony." Vale finally turned, his gaze like ice. "Do you think they'll survive if we hesitate?" Kale swallowed hard, then nodded. "Transmitting authorization." The Revenant's engines roared as it shifted into a lower, more aggressive orbit. Its hull plates opened, revealing missile bays that had not been used since the siege of Titan Prime. Each warhead was a weapon of planetary denial, designed not just to kill, but to ensure nothing ever crawled out of the ashes. To the colonists watching from the surface, it was like seeing the sky grow teeth. Are they going to bomb us too?" whispered one young boy in the bunker. The eldest survivor, an old miner with one cybernetic arm, stared at the ship overhead and shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "They're going to kill this whole world, so we can live." When the missiles fell, they came down like a rain of fire. Each one detonated with a blinding flash, not simply exploding but releasing clouds of nanite shrapnel designed to consume organic matter on a molecular level. The swarm screamed, a sound that echoed not in the ears but in the bones, before the front line simply dissolved into mist. Even that wasn't enough. From the far horizon, the last and largest of the swarm appeared, a living wall of armor and teeth, charging through fire and nanites as if driven by some unholy will. They moved faster now, as if enraged. For every one that fell, 2 more leapt over its corpse. The Revenant's guns kept firing, but even Vale could see it. If the swarm reached the colony, even one survivor was enough to restart the entire nightmare. "Sir," Kale said softly. "We're reaching critical ammo expenditure. If we keep firing at this rate." "Then we fire until there's nothing left," Vale said. But deep down, he knew this wouldn't be enough. If the swarm was this strong here, then this world wasn't just a random nest. It was a breeding world. And if that was true, then this war was only just beginning. The swarm's roar became a storm. From every canyon, every shattered nest, every smoking crater, they surged, black shapes against the fire-lit horizon, endless as the night itself. The ground trembled under their charge, a living quake racing toward the last habitable dome. On the Revenant's bridge, Captain Eric Vale stood in perfect stillness, one hand resting against the tactical console. The display showed red, solid red. Not contacts anymore, just a wall of heat signatures. A planet trying to kill its invaders. He had seen this before. On Callisto Prime, when the Titan hives awoke. On Perseus 9, where they had buried their dead in fire to keep the enemy from using their corpses. Vale's expression didn't change. But in his chest, a decision crystallized. "Helm," he said, voice calm. "Lock us into a geosynchronous kill orbit." Every officer turned toward him, silent. They all knew what that meant. Kale swallowed hard. "You're authorizing the Iron Curtain?" "Yes." The words were quiet. But they hit the bridge like a gunshot. The Iron Curtain was not a weapon in the conventional sense. It was a planetary verdict. Designed for wars that could not be won, it scoured entire ecosystems in a single sweep. As the command codes transmitted, the Revenant's belly opened like a leviathan's maw. Inside sat the payload. A tungsten core device encased in gravitic lenses, its surface pulsing with controlled fury. "Countdown locked," said Kale, her voice steady but pale. "Planetary saturation in T-4 minutes." Vale turned to the comms officer. "Patch me through to the surface." Deep in the last remaining colony dome, survivors huddled around the battered holoprojector as Vale's face appeared. He looked like a man carved from steel. "This is Captain Eric Vale of the Terran Navy," his voice rolled through the shelter like thunder. "You are being evacuated." The words caused an uproar, relief, disbelief, fear. "How?" someone shouted. "The surface is crawling." "You will be extracted by drop shuttle in 2 minutes, Vale continued, unflinching. "You will take nothing but what you can carry. Because when you leave, there will be nothing left." Even through the static, the colonists could feel the weight behind those words. Drop pods screamed through the burning sky. Terran Marines in black exosuits stormed into the dome, moving with ruthless efficiency. They gathered survivors, tagged them with evac transponders, and pulled them toward the shuttles. Outside, the swarm slammed into the defensive guns. But every second the Revenant's guns spoke, burning away wave after wave, buying just enough time for the last colonist to board. Vale stood motionless as reports came in. "All civilians aboard. All pods clear." "Then do it," he said. The Iron Curtain fell. To an outside observer, it was beautiful. A single spear of light descended from orbit, striking the planet's surface with pinpoint precision. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the world howled. The light expanded outward into a blinding white hemisphere, devouring everything in its path. The swarm dissolved as if erased by a god's hand. Forests, rivers, mountains, gone in an instant, turned to glass and ash. Even from orbit, the glare was so bright the Revenant's viewports auto-dimmed. When it was over, Coridian 4 was silent. No movement. No bio-signs. No swarm. Only a glassy wasteland where life had once struggled to exist. Kale turned to her captain, her face pale. Planet is sterilized. No further threats detected. Vale didn't look away from the viewport. Mark it as quarantined, he said softly. No one comes back here. Ever. He turned toward the comms officer. Transmit to Concord Command, Sector 7 is compromised. This was a breeding world. The comm officer hesitated. Sir, that means... It means we aren't done, Vale said. Tell them the Terran Navy is coming. Tell them we are cleansing the whole sector. Across the galaxy, the message spread like wildfire. In the halls of the Concord, ambassadors stared at the transmission in silence. On frontier outposts, smugglers and traders whispered it in hushed voices. Even the Deathworlders who had once mocked humanity as prey listened, and shivered. Because humanity had not merely defended a colony. They had made a statement. In the final hours before leaving orbit, Vale allowed himself one moment on the observation deck. Below, the planet glowed faintly in the dark, still hot from the cleansing. Kale joined him, silent for a while. Finally, she asked. Do you ever wonder, sir, if we're becoming the monsters they fear? Vale didn't answer at first. His eyes stayed on the burning world. They started this, he said quietly. We're just finishing it. He turned away, his shadow stretching across the deck. Set course for the next nest. We're not stopping until the galaxy remembers. What happens when humanity comes to war? The Revenant's engines flared, and the black ship vanished into FTL. Behind it, the dead world stayed silent. But across the stars, predators began to hesitate. Because the humans had reached the Deathworlders. And they hadn't come to plead. They had come to end the war.